They thought I was finished. What they didn't know was this was just intermission. My name is Juliana, and 6 months ago, my husband served me divorce papers while I was lying in a hospital bed. Not just any hospital bed, the one I'd been confined to for weeks, while doctors tried to figure out why my body was slowly shutting down. Chronic fatigue, muscle weakness, cognitive fog, the works. But that's not even the part that broke me. "Jules, you have a visitor," the nurse had said cheerfully that morning, probably thinking it was my daily check-in from Travis. Instead, it was his lawyer. The manila envelope landed on my blanket with a soft thud. Travis couldn't even face me himself, 8 years of marriage, and he sent a stranger in a cheap suit to do his dirty work. "Mrs. Lewis, these are—" "I know what they are," I cut him off, my voice steadier than I felt. "Where is he? Mr. Lewis thought it best to handle this professionally." I almost laughed. Professional? Right. Because nothing says professional like abandoning your wife during a health crisis. That night, I cried until my IV monitor started beeping. The nurses came running, probably thinking I was coding. Instead, they found me clutching my phone, watching a video that would change everything. Hey, here's to her finally crawling out of our lives. Nora, my mother-in-law, was toasting with a champagne glass, her perfectly manicured hands steady as she addressed a room full of laughing guests. The video, sent by someone who still had a conscience, showed the Lewis family's divorce party at their country club. Travis stood next to his mother, arm around some young blonde from his office. Daria, the woman he'd been working late with while I was getting MRIs and spinal taps. "To think," Nora continued, her voice dripping with venom, "she actually believed she belonged in this family, as if restoring that old house made her worthy of the Lewis name." The house, our house, the one I'd spent 3 years renovating, turning a dilapidated Victorian into a showpiece that even Architectural Digest had featured. The one thing I'd brought to the marriage that had made them respect me, or so I thought. My phone buzzed with a text from Bryn Lee, my best friend and the only paralegal I trust. "Jules, they're listing the house. Tomorrow." I should have felt devastated. Instead, I felt something else stirring, something cold and calculating that had been dormant since I got sick. "Remember that clause?" I texted back. 3 dots appeared. Then, "The one Clark helped you add during refinancing. Holy shit, Jules, you're not—" "Call him now." My hands shook as I pulled up the property documents on my phone. 4 years ago, during what Travis thought was a routine refinancing, I'd added a conditional lien protecting my premarital contributions and renovation expenses. Clark, my attorney, had buried it in legal jargon Travis never bothered to read. The monitor started beeping again, but this time it was because my heart rate was rising with anticipation. My phone lit up with Brinley's call. "Clark says it's ironclad," she said, not even bothering with hello. "They can't sell without your approval. And get this, any attempt to force a sale triggers automatic financial penalties." "Let them list it," I said, surprising myself with how calm I sounded. "Let them bring in buyers. Let them think they've won." "Jules," Brinley's voice softened, "are you sure? You're still recovering." I looked down at my hospital bracelet, at the IV in my arm, at all the physical reminders of my weakness. But my mind? My mind was sharper than it had been in months. "They think I'm too sick to fight back," I said. "Too broken to notice they're trying to steal the one thing I built with my own hands. But you know what, Bryn? Sometimes the sick ones are the most dangerous. We have nothing left to lose." Through the hospital window, I could see the sun setting over the city. Somewhere across town, the Lewis family was probably still celebrating my downfall, still laughing about how easily they'd discarded me. "Make the calls," I told Brinley, "and find out who that realtor is, the one they're using, Serenity something." "What are you planning?" I smiled. feeling more alive than I had in weeks. I'm planning to teach them that karma isn't just a cute saying on Instagram. It's a bitch who takes notes and keeps receipts. The monitor beeped one more time, but I didn't care. For the first time since getting sick, since watching my marriage crumble, since being treated like something disposable, I had purpose again. They wanted a show? Fine. I'd give them one hell of a final act. I wish I could have bottled the silence in that room and saved it for a rainy day. 4 years earlier, I'd sat across from Clark in his downtown office, watching Travis skim through refinancing documents with his usual impatience. "Just the standard stuff, right?" Travis had asked, clicking his Mont Blanc pen. "We need this done before the bank closes." Clark had glanced at me, his poker face perfect. Standard protection clauses, yes, nothing unusual for a property of this value. What Travis didn't know was that I'd met with Clark privately the week before. I'd noticed things, small things, missing money from our joint account, late-night calls he took in the garage, the way Nora had started making comments about protecting family assets. "The clause is buried in Section 12B, Clark had whispered during our secret meeting. "It looks like boilerplate language about property improvements, but it's actually a protective lien. If they try to force you out during any period of medical or financial duress, the house is yours." Now, watching Travis's Mercedes pull up to my house with a car full of potential buyers, I felt that old familiar flutter of anxiety. But this time, it wasn't fear. It was anticipation. "Ready?" Brinley squeezed my hand. We sat in her car across the street, watching the show unfold. The Realtor, Serenity, bounced out of her own vehicle in a pink blazer that screamed, "First year in real estate!" Behind her came Nora, wearing the same smug smile she'd had at my divorce party. "God, I hate that smile," Brinley muttered. "Wait for it," I said. The potential buyers, a couple in their 40s, followed Serenity up the walkway I'd laid myself, past the heritage roses I'd planted. Travis was doing his charming host routine, probably telling them about the house's potential, as if he'd had anything to do with its transformation. My phone buzzed. "Clark, documents delivered to their agent standing by." "Show time," I whispered. We watched through the front windows as the group toured the foyer. Even from outside, I could see Serenity's animated gestures, probably gushing about the original hardwood floors I'd restored by hand. Then her phone rang. Even from across the street, we could see her expression change. She excused herself, stepping onto the porch. A few minutes later, she went back inside. "Mrs. Lewis?" We heard her voice shake slightly. "Could I speak with you privately?" Nora's face tightened. They disappeared into the kitchen, my kitchen, where I'd spent countless hours designing the perfect layout. 3, 2, 1, Brinley counted down. "What do you mean she owns it?" Nora's screech carried through the open windows. The potential buyers jumped. "I'm so sorry," Serenity stammered, emerging from the kitchen with a sheet of paper. "But according to these documents, Mrs. Kent holds primary financial interest due to something called a renovation lien. We can't proceed with any sale without her explicit approval." Travis snatched the paper. "This is impossible. The divorce agreement doesn't override the refinancing clause," Serenity explained, her professional demeanour cracking. "And attempting to list the property without the lien holder's consent triggers automatic penalties." "Get Clark on the phone," Nora demanded, but her voice had lost its usual authority. The potential buyers were already backing toward the door. "We should go," the wife said quietly. "Clearly there are some issues to resolve." "No, please," Travis stepped forward. "This is just a misunderstanding." "A misunderstanding?" The husband frowned. "You're trying to sell a house you don't fully own?" That's when I stepped out of Brinley's car. The late afternoon sun hit the front of the house, my house, making the restored stained glass windows shimmer. I'd spent weeks getting those windows right, matching historical photos to recreate their original glory. "Hello, Travis!" I called out, my voice carrying across the lawn. "Having an open house without me?" The colour drained from his face. Nora's hands clenched into fists. "You!" she spat. "You planned this!" "No," I corrected her, walking slowly up the path. "I protected what was mine. There's a difference." The potential buyers hurried to their car. Serenity looked like she wanted to melt into the ground. "You can't do this," Travis said, but his voice lacked conviction. I reached out and took the listing papers from his hands. "Actually, I can, and I did, 4 years ago, while you were too busy not reading the fine print." "We'll fight this," Nora threatened. "Please do," I smiled. "I'm sure the judge will love to hear about how you tried to sell property you don't own while I was in the hospital. Speaking of which," I turned to Serenity, "you might want to alert other agents about this property's complications." I walked back to Brinley's car, my steps steady despite my still recovering body. Behind me, I heard Nora's shrill voice starting to berate Travis. "That," Brinley said as I got in, "was better than any reality TV show I've ever watched." "Oh, honey," I buckled my seatbelt, "we're just getting started." The text message came 3 days after the open house disaster. "Can we meet? I need to tell you something." Riley, Travis's brother, the quiet one, the one who'd stood in the corner during their divorce party, not exactly participating, but not stopping it either. "It's a trap," Brinley said when I showed her the message. We were having coffee at her place, away from the chaos my house had become. "The Lewis family is desperate. They'll try anything." I stirred my tea, watching the leaves swirl. Maybe, but Riley was different. Remember when I first got sick? He brought me books. Serial killers probably bring their victims books too. I laughed despite myself. "I'll meet him somewhere public, the coffee shop on Main." "I'm coming with you." "No," I said, "but you can sit at another table and pretend you're not watching us like a hawk." The next morning, I spotted Riley through the coffee shop window before he saw me. He looked tired, his usually neat appearance slightly rumpled. When I walked in, he stood up so quickly he almost knocked over his chair. "Juliana," he said, "thank you for coming." I sat down, keeping my expression neutral. "Why am I here, Riley?" He glanced around nervously before sliding an envelope across the table. "Because what they did to you was wrong, all of it, and—" He lowered his voice. "What if I told you Travis wasn't just cheating with one woman, but orchestrating something bigger, with your medical trust?" My hand froze halfway to my coffee cup. "What?" "Open it." He nodded at the envelope. Inside were bank statements, emails, transaction records. My vision blurred as I scanned the documents, but certain phrases jumped out. Transfer authorization, investment opportunity, medical trust dissolution. "How did you get these?" "I work in the family business too, remember. I have access to the servers. When you got sick, Travis started moving money around, but it wasn't just affairs or divorce planning. He was building his new company," I finished, my voice hollow, "with my medical trust money." Riley nodded. "With Daria as a board member. They've been planning this for months, before you even got diagnosed." The coffee shop suddenly felt too warm, too crowded. A barista called out someone's order, the noise making me jump. "Why are you showing me this?" I asked. "They're your family." Riley's face hardened. "Because last week I overheard Mom, Nora, talking about how they planned it all, getting you diagnosed, rushing the divorce while you were too sick to fight back. She said, and I quote, 'Better we cut her off now, before she dies broke and sues us.'" My hands started shaking, not from weakness this time, from rage. "There's more," Riley continued. "They pressured Travis to file for divorce as soon as your condition became official. There are emails. Mum was worried you might actually recover and discover what they'd done with the trust." Why now? I asked. Why are you turning on them now? He was quiet for a moment. Because I watched them celebrate your suffering like it was a victory. Because I saw my brother become someone I don't recognize. And because... He pulled out one more document. I found this medical directive with your forged signature on it. Mum did that, not Travis. She was trying to remove you from making critical decisions about your own care. The coffee shop suddenly felt like it was spinning. Brinley appeared at my side. She must have seen my distress from her surveillance spot. I think we're done here, she said firmly. Wait, Riley stood up. There's one more thing. Travis and Daria, they're planning to go public with their company next month, using your money, your trust. They think you're too broken to notice. I gathered the documents with trembling hands. Thank you, Riley. But why should I trust you? Because I'm done being complicit, he said simply, and because you deserve to know the truth, even if it destroys my family. As Brinley led me out, I heard Riley call after me. They're having a board meeting next week, announcing the company launch. I can get you in. Outside, the autumn air hit my face like a wake-up call. Brinley gripped my arm, steadying me. Jules, what are you thinking? I looked down at the envelope full of evidence. My medical trust, the one my parents had set up before they died, had funded Travis's betrayal. Every doctor's appointment, every test, every treatment had been a cover for their scheme. I'm thinking, I said slowly, that it's time to crash a board meeting. Brinley's eyes widened. You're not serious. Oh, but I am. I pulled out my phone and dialed Clark's number. And this time, we're not just going after the house, we're going after everything. The line connected, and Clark's voice came through. Juliana, what do you need? I smiled, and it wasn't a nice smile. How do you feel about corporate fraud cases? Miss Ferguson? I extended my hand to the young blonde sitting across from me. Thank you for agreeing to meet about the house. Daria shifted uncomfortably in her seat at the upscale restaurant. Of course, though I'm surprised you contacted me instead of Travis or the Realtor. Oh, but you're exactly who I wanted to see. I smiled, watching her perfectly manicured fingers tap nervously on the white tablecloth. After all, you're not just Travis's girlfriend anymore, are you? You're also a board member of his new venture. Her face paled slightly. How did you know about that? Let's just say I've been doing my homework. Speaking of which, I pulled out a folder and laid it on the table. Could you explain why your signature appears on withdrawals from my medical trust fund? The waiter approached with water, but I waved him away. Daria's eyes darted toward the exit. Those were authorized transfers, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Travis had power of attorney. Did he? That's interesting, because according to my lawyer, that medical directive was forged, just like these transfer authorizations. I tapped the documents. Your handwriting is quite distinctive, Daria, especially those little hearts you dot your I's with. She swallowed hard. What do you want? I want you to look at me, really look at me, and tell me if it was worth it. While I was getting spinal taps and fighting to stay conscious, you were helping Travis steal my medical trust to fund your little start-up dreams. It wasn't like that, she protested weakly. Travis said you'd agreed to invest. While I was semi-conscious in the hospital? I leaned forward. Do you know what fraud is, Daria? Because the SEC has some very specific definitions. The colour drained completely from her face. You wouldn't. Actually, I would, but I'm giving you a chance first. Tell me everything. Dates, amounts, who knew what, and maybe I'll consider not pressing charges. She glanced around the restaurant nervously. I can't. Travis would what? Dump you? Honey, he's going to do that anyway once this all falls apart. You're just collateral damage to him. Trust me, I know. Her lower lip trembled. I have emails, she whispered, and recordings of meetings. Travis and Nora. They planned everything. They waited until you were too sick to notice the transfers. Send them to this address. I slid her a card with Brinley's work email. All of them, now. She pulled out her phone with shaking hands. As she forwarded the evidence, I noticed a familiar face enter the restaurant, right on schedule. One more thing, I said, standing up. Wave to the financial journalist at table 6. He's been taking notes on our entire conversation. Daria's head snapped up just as the journalist approached our table, recorder in hand. Miss Ferguson, he said, I'm doing a story on emerging tech startups and their funding sources. Would you care to comment on the use of medical trust funds in your company's initial capitalization? I gathered my things, leaving Daria stammering through what would become very quotable panic. Outside, Brinley was waiting in her car. How'd it go? Better than expected. I checked my phone as it buzzed with incoming emails from Daria. She rolled over faster than I thought she would. Travis is going to lose it when this hits the press. That's the plan. I scrolled through the emails, each one more damning than the last. Look at this. They even discussed timing the divorce around my worst health days. Nora called it optimal leverage conditions. Monsters, Brinley muttered, pulling into traffic. What's next? Now we wait. The article drops tomorrow morning, right before their big investor meeting. Travis thinks he's announcing his company launch. Instead, he's announcing his own downfall. Brinley grinned. You know what the best part is. He did this to himself, all of it. My phone buzzed again, this time with a text from Riley. Board meeting started early. They're celebrating already. Travis just ordered champagne. I texted back. Tell him to save some for tomorrow's headlines. Then another message came through, this one from Travis himself. We need to talk. About the house. I'm willing to negotiate. No, you're not, I whispered to my phone. You're just trying to get ahead of what's coming, too late. Brinley glanced at me. You okay? I looked out the window at the city sliding by, remembering all those nights I'd spent alone in the hospital, while Travis was with Daria, planning how to steal my future. You know what the worst part was, I said quietly. Not the cheating, not even the theft. It was how they assumed I was too weak to fight back, how they mistook my illness for stupidity. Well, Brinley pulled up to my house, my legally protected, untouchable house. They won't make that mistake again. I smiled, watching the sunset paint my restored Victorian in shades of gold. No, they won't, because tomorrow they'll learn that sometimes the sick ones are the most dangerous. We have nothing left to lose, and all the time in the world to plan our revenge. The article hit at 6 a.m. sharp. By 6:05, my phone was exploding with notifications. Tech startup. Scandal. Local entrepreneur accused of defrauding sick wife's medical trust. I sat in my kitchen, sipping tea and watching the chaos unfold through the texts and emails flooding my screen. Riley was providing live updates from the office. Travis just threw his phone across the room. 3 investors already pulled out. Daria called in sick. Mum's on her way, she's furious. The journalist had done a masterful job. Every detail was there. The forged documents, the timed divorce, the systematic draining of my medical trust. He'd even included quotes from Daria about the planned corporate takeover during victims' health crisis. At 7:15, my doorbell rang. I already knew who it was. You vindictive bitch, Nora spat as soon as I opened the door. She tried to push past me into the house, but I held my ground. Careful, I said calmly. Everything you say is being recorded. Again. She froze, finally noticing the security camera above the door, the one that had caught her previous trespassing attempts. You've destroyed this family, she hissed. No, you did that yourself. Would you like to explain why you forged my signature on medical directives? Because the DA is very interested in that part. Her perfectly composed face cracked. You can't prove... Actually, I can. I pulled out my phone and played a recording. Nora's own voice discussing the forgery with Travis. Riley's been quite helpful. Turns out he has a conscience. Who knew? Riley! The colour drained from her face. He wouldn't... He did, along with copies of every email you sent pressuring Travis to divorce me while I was hospitalised. My favourite was the one where you wrote, "Better we cut her off now before she dies broke and sues us." That showed real motherly concern. Nora's hands started shaking. "What do you want?" "Want? I want back every penny you stole from my medical trust. I want Travis's company dissolved before it can go public with my stolen money. And I want you to live with the knowledge that your own arrogance brought this all crashing down." My phone buzzed again. Another text from Riley. "Stock exchange pulled the IPO listing. Travis is having a meltdown in the conference room. You know what the funny thing is?" I continued, showing Nora the text. "If you had just left me alone, let me keep my house, my dignity, my medical care, none of this would have happened. But you just couldn't resist celebrating my downfall, could you?" "We'll fight this," she threatened, but her voice wavered. "Please do. I'm sure the jury will love watching that video of your divorce party toast. Here's to her finally crawling out of our lives." Really brought tears to my eyes. A sleek black car pulled up to the curb. Clark stepped out carrying a briefcase. "Mrs. Lewis," he called out. "Perfect timing. I have some court documents that need your attention." Nora's face went from pale to ashen. "What documents?" "Oh, just the formal investigation notices," I said sweetly. "The DA is particularly interested in medical fraud. Did you know that forging healthcare directives is a felony? You wouldn't dare. Watch me." I stepped back into my house. "By the way, how's your country club membership holding up? I hear they're not too fond of members facing criminal charges." The door closed on her shocked face. Through the window, I watched her stumble back to her car, her usual confident stride replaced by something almost fragile. My phone lit up with a call from Brinley. "Jules, you're trending on Twitter. The business community is imploding. 3 more board members just resigned from Travis's company." "And Nora?" "Her private investment portfolio is tanking. Turns out she tied most of her personal assets to Travis's venture. She's losing everything." I walked to my study, the room where I'd spent countless hours researching laws and planning this moment while recovering my strength. "Any word from Travis?" "He's been calling everyone he knows for emergency funding. No one's touching this. One investor actually laughed and hung up on him." I sat down at my desk, looking at the framed photo I kept as a reminder. Me in my hospital bed, the day Travis had served divorce papers. I'd looked so broken then. "You know what the best revenge is, Bryn?" I asked, taking the photo out of its frame. "Watching them destroy themselves with their own greed." "Speaking of destruction," she said, "Riley just sent another update. Apparently Nora's having a complete meltdown in the office. She's screaming about family loyalty and threatening to disown him." I smiled, dropping the hospital photo into the shredder. "Karma's not just a bitch," I said, watching the image disappear. "She's also really good at taking notes." The courthouse hallway felt colder than I remembered. Or maybe it was just the ice in Nora's glare as she sat across from me, her designer suit somehow looking less crisp than usual. "All rise," the bailiff called out. I stood, steadier on my feet than I'd been in months. Recovery was a funny thing. Sometimes all you needed was a good dose of righteous anger to speed it along. "Busy in the matter of Kent versus Lewis Enterprises," Judge Martinez began, "regarding allegations of medical trust fraud, asset misappropriation, and falsification of medical documents." Travis wouldn't meet my eyes from his place at the defense table. His lawyer kept whispering urgently in his ear, but he just stared straight ahead, his jaw clenched. "Your Honour," my attorney began, "we have evidence of systematic fraud spanning 18 months. While my client was experiencing a severe health crisis, the defendants orchestrated an elaborate scheme to drain her medical trust fund for their own business ventures. The evidence appeared on the courtroom screens: bank transfers, forged signatures, email chains. Each exhibit felt like another nail in their coffin. Furthermore, he continued, we have testimony from an insider regarding the intentional timing of these actions to coincide with Ms. Kent's periods of highest medical vulnerability. Riley stood up from his seat in the gallery. Travis's head snapped around, finally showing emotion, raw betrayal. No, Nora hissed, half rising before her lawyer pulled her back down. You can't do this! But Riley was already walking to the witness stand. Under oath, he laid it all out. The planned divorce, the forged documents, the calculated timing of each move. His voice never wavered, even when describing how his own mother had laughed about my illness at their country club meetings. And Mrs. Lewis specifically said, he paused, glancing at Nora, that they needed to strip her bare before she recovers enough to fight back. The judge's expression darkened. I watched Nora's face contort as her own son dismantled her carefully constructed world. Then came the financial forensics expert, methodically tracking every dollar from my medical trust through shell companies and into Travis's startup. The jury's faces showed increasing disgust with each revelation. Your Honour, Nora's lawyer interrupted desperately, my client is willing to discuss a settlement. No, I said, standing up. I want this on record, all of it. The judge nodded. Proceed. By lunch break, Travis looked physically ill. During recess, his lawyer cornered mine with settlement offers, each one larger than the last. I rejected them all. The afternoon brought Daria to the stand. She'd traded her usual sleek outfits for something more subdued, almost penitent. Yes, she testified, her voice small. I knew the money came from her medical trust. Travis said she'd agreed to it, but... She swallowed hard. I saw her once in the hospital. She couldn't even hold a pen. There's no way she could have authorized anything. When Nora took the stand, her mask finally cracked completely. She was never good enough for this family, she exploded after 10 minutes of questioning, always playing the victim with her mysterious illness and her renovation projects. Mrs. Lewis, the judge warned, she was weak, she deserved... Mrs. Lewis, the judge's gavel came down hard, control yourself or I'll hold you in contempt. But Nora was beyond control. We built this company. We deserve that money more than some bedridden... Bailiff, the judge ordered, remove the defendant. As they led Nora out, still ranting, I caught Travis's eye. For the first time, I saw real fear there. The verdict came faster than anyone expected. The jury had barely deliberated 2 hours. We find in favour of the plaintiff, the foreman announced, and recommend maximum punitive damages. The judge's final ruling was devastating. Full repayment of my medical trust, plus damages. The company would be dissolved, all assets frozen pending criminal investigation. Furthermore, Judge Martinez added, I am referring this case to the district attorney for criminal prosecution, particularly regarding the forged medical directives. Falsifying healthcare documents is a serious offence. As the courtroom emptied, Travis approached me. He looked thinner, desperate. Jules, he said quietly, please, can we talk? I need to explain. He looked thinner, desperate, and I let him squirm in that silence, just like I did in the hospital bed. There's nothing to explain, I finally said. You made your choices. Now you get to live with them. Outside, reporters clustered on the courthouse steps. Riley caught up with me before I reached them. They're filing for bankruptcy, he said. Mum's trying to protect what's left of her assets. Are you okay? I asked, with all of this. He smiled sadly. Someone once told me that doing the right thing isn't always comfortable, but it's always right. I faced the reporters' cameras, standing straight despite my lingering fatigue. They wanted a statement about justice, about victory. Instead, I gave them the truth. Sometimes, I said clearly, the best revenge is simply letting people face the consequences of their own actions. Behind me, I heard Travis calling my name one last time. I didn't turn around. The restaurant hostess led me to the same table where the Lewis family had held their divorce party months ago. I'd chosen it deliberately. "Your other party is already here," she said, gesturing to Travis, who sat hunched over a glass of water. His designer suit had been replaced by department store clothing, his usual confident posture gone. "Juliana!" He stood quickly, pulling out my chair. "Thank you for—" "Sit down, Travis." I remained standing. "This isn't a reconciliation." He sank back into his seat. A waiter approached, but I waved him away. "Why did you agree to meet?" Travis asked, his voice hoarse. I set my phone on the table, recording app open. "Because I want you to hear something." The recording played, Nora's voice from the divorce party. "Here's to her finally crawling out of our lives." Laughter, clinking glasses, Travis's own voice joining in with a cruel joke about my illness. "Remember that night?" I asked, stopping the playback. "You were sitting right here, celebrating my destruction with your girlfriend while I was fighting to breathe in a hospital bed." He stared at his water glass. "Jules, I was wrong. I know that now. But we could start over." "Start over?" I laughed, and several nearby diners turned to look. "Let me tell you what starting over looks like, Travis. Your company's assets are being liquidated. Your mother's facing criminal charges for medical fraud. Your girlfriend rolled over on you the moment things got tough. How's that for a fresh start?" I never meant to get caught. I pulled out a document and slid it across the table. "Sign it." "What is it?" "The transfer papers for your remaining investment accounts. Sign them, and I won't press criminal charges against you personally." His hands shook as he reached for the paper. "This is everything I have left." "No, everything you had left was my trust in you. This," I tapped the document, "this is just money you stole from me while I was sick." He picked up his pen, then hesitated. "What about us? All those years together?" "Were a lie?" I raised my glass, mimicking Nora's toast from months ago. Here's to finally seeing the truth, to realizing that the man I married never existed. He was just a mask you wore until something better came along. Travis signed the papers, his signature barely legible. As he did, I noticed his phone light up with a text from Daria. "Please stop calling me." "She left you too, didn't she?" I asked softly. The moment things got difficult. Funny how karma works. "What am I supposed to do now?" he whispered. "I heard the construction company on 5th is hiring. Manual labour. Seems appropriate, don't you think? Building something with your own hands for once instead of stealing other people's work." I stood up, gathering the signed documents. "For what it's worth, Travis, I don't hate you anymore. That would require you to still matter to me." Outside, Riley was waiting by his car. He'd insisted on being nearby, worried Travis might make a scene. "How'd it go?" he asked. "He signed. It's done." I leaned against the car, suddenly exhausted. "How's your mum?" Still refusing to admit she did anything wrong. The DA offered her a plea deal, but... He shrugged. "You know how she is." "And you? Are you okay?" He smiled sadly. "Getting there. Started therapy last week. Turns out watching your family implode leaves some scars." "Riley," I touched his arm, "thank you for doing the right thing, for telling the truth. Don't thank me. I should have spoken up sooner." He looked at me carefully. "What about you? What's next?" I thought about my house, standing proud and empty, about the medical trust, now restored and growing, about the strength slowly returning to my body. "I walk alone," I said finally, "not because I have to, but because I choose to, at least for now." "You're not alone," he said quietly. "You have friends, real ones." "I know," I smiled. "But this chapter of my life, it needs to end with just me, standing on my own feet, building something new." As if on cue, my phone buzzed with a notification. The local business journal wanted to interview me about starting a foundation for victims of medical fraud. "See?" I showed Riley the email. "Something new already." He hugged me goodbye, and I watched him drive away, the last good thing to come out of my connection to the Lewis family. Back home, I poured myself a glass of wine and stood in my kitchen, the one I'd designed in the house I'd fought for. Through the window, I could see the gardens starting to bloom again after winter. "To earned peace," I whispered to the empty room, raising my glass. "And to Karma, who takes her sweet time but never forgets." The setting sun painted my restored Victorian in shades of gold, and for the first time in months, I felt nothing but calm. The morning sun streams through my restored stained glass windows, casting colourful patterns across my kitchen floor. My coffee is still hot when my phone buzzes with a news alert. "Former socialite Nora Lewis pleads guilty to medical fraud charges." I open the article, scanning quickly. Accepted plea deal, 6 months house arrest, substantial fines, reputation in shambles. Brinley burst through my front door without knocking, waving her phone. "Did you see?" "I saw." I slide her a cup of coffee. "Karma's finally cashing those checks." "That's not even the best part," she grins. "Guess who's working construction now?" I drove past the new development on 5th, and there was Travis carrying lumber like a common mortal. The doorbell rings before I can respond. It's Serenity, the realtor from that fateful open house. She looks nervous. "I'm not selling," I say before she can speak. "Actually," she fidgets with her clipboard, "I'm here because, well, I'm starting my own agency. After what happened with the Lewis family, I realized I needed to do things differently, more ethically. I was hoping you might consider being on my advisory board." I study her face, young, earnest, changed by what she witnessed. "Come in," I say. "Let's talk about it over coffee." As we discuss her plans, another visitor arrives, Riley, carrying a newspaper. "You made the front page," he says, spreading it on my kitchen island. "Local woman launches medical fraud prevention foundation." The photo shows me standing on the courthouse steps, looking stronger than I've felt in years. The headline reads, "From Victim to Advocate, a story of justice served." "How's therapy?" I ask him. "Good. Hard." He accepts a coffee from Brinley. "Mum's not speaking to me, but that's probably healthy right now." "And Travis?" Still calling Daria, still getting blocked, still carrying lumber." He shakes his head. "The mighty have fallen." My phone buzzes again. An email from Clark. "Criminal investigation into Nora's country club friends reveals similar fraud patterns. They're calling you as an expert witness. Interested?" "Always," I type back. Serenity leans forward. "Is it true what they're saying? That you knew all along? That you planned everything?" "Not everything," I admit, "but I knew enough to protect myself. Sometimes the best revenge is just being 3 steps ahead." The doorbell rings again. This time, it's a delivery. Flowers from the DA's office, thanking me for my testimony. The card reads, "Your case has opened the floodgates. More victims coming forward daily." You know what this means? Brinley picks up the card. "You're not just their karma anymore. You're their legacy." I walk to my study, now converted into the Foundation's first office. The walls are lined with case files, each one a story like mine. On my desk sits a framed quote, "Justice is not revenge, but restoration." The Foundation's first meeting is tonight, I tell them. "We're reviewing cases of medical fraud victims who need legal support. Want to help?" They all nod, and something warm spreads through my chest. This is what healing looks like. Not just getting better, but making things better. My phone buzzes one last time. A text from an unknown number. I'm sorry. T. I delete it without responding. Some chapters don't need closure. They just need to end. You know what the strangest part is? I say to my friends gathered in my kitchen. I thought revenge would feel like winning, but this, helping others fight back, turning pain into purpose, this feels like something better. Like what? Riley asks. Like peace, real peace, not the fake kind I had when I was pretending everything was fine. Through my kitchen window, I can see new flowers blooming in my garden. Life moves in cycles, destruction, restoration, growth. I've lived through all three. So, Brinley raises her coffee cup, what's next for the woman who brought down an empire? I smile, picking up the stack of case files. We build something better, something that lasts, something that helps people fight back. The fighting back, they chorus, raising their cups. I look around my kitchen at these people who chose truth over comfort, justice over ease. At the home I fought to keep, at the life I rebuilt from ashes. I don't believe in happy endings anymore, but I do believe in earned peace, and damn, mine took everything to win. Now it's time to help others win theirs. To fighting back, I agree, raising my cup, and to never underestimating the sick girl in the corner. She might just be taking notes.
I always knew I was adopted. My father, James Richardson, never hid that fact from me. What my sister Catherine didn't know was that being adopted wasn't the only secret in our family. I'm Emma Chin, and at 32, I became the CEO of Richardson Global Enterprises, a fact that sent my sister into a very public meltdown. But let me start from the beginning. Dad adopted me when I was 6 after my biological parents died in a car accident in Hong Kong. He was there closing a business deal and visited the orphanage as part of his charitable works. Something about the quiet Asian girl reading advanced mathematics books in the corner caught his attention. 3 months later, I had a new home, a new sister, and a father who saw something in me that would change both our lives. Catherine, 2 years older than me, never accepted my presence. Where Dad saw potential, she saw competition. While I was diving into business books and learning about investments, she was focused on being the perfect socialite, the natural heir to the Richardson name. Blood will always matter more than paper, she'd say when Dad wasn't around. What none of them knew was that Dad had been preparing me to take over his company since I was 12. Those weren't just casual conversations about business over breakfast. They were carefully planned lessons. The summer internships weren't just to keep me busy. They were training grounds. By the time I finished my MBA, I knew every aspect of Richardson Global Enterprises intimately. Dad kept my training secret, not out of shame, but strategy. The business world is like a chess game, Emma, he'd tell me. The best moves are the ones your opponents don't see coming. Catherine married Trevor Williams, heir to a banking fortune, in what society pages called the merger of the decade. The fact that Trevor's bank was secretly struggling under bad investments wasn't public knowledge yet. But Dad and I knew. We'd been quietly buying up their debt through shell companies for months. When Dad was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer, he called me to his study one night. "It's time," he said, handing me a thick envelope. "Everything's prepared. Just remember what I taught you. Patience is the deadliest weapon in business." He died 3 weeks later. The funeral was exactly as Catherine wanted it, lavish, public, and designed to emphasize her position as the grieving daughter. I sat quietly in the back, as she'd instructed. "No need to confuse people about your place in the family," she'd said with a cold smile. After the service, during the reception at our family estate, Catherine made her move. She clinked her glass for attention, her black designer dress perfectly coordinating with her crocodile tears. "I want to thank everyone for coming to honor my father," she began, emphasizing the my. Family meant everything to him, and as his only true child, I know he'd want us to be honest today. She turned to me, her smile razor sharp. "Emma, dear, I think it's time we stopped pretending. You were a charity case, a tax write-off Dad's accountant suggested. You're not real family, and it's time for you to go." The room fell silent. 200 of New York's elite waited for my response. Trevor smirked beside his wife, probably already spending the inheritance in his head. I stood slowly, straightened my simple black dress, and smiled. Of course, Catherine. You're right, we should stop pretending. I walked to the door, then turned back. See you at the will reading. Don't bother, she called after me. Dad's lawyers already confirmed everything goes to his real hair. I just smiled again. We'll see. 2 days later, in the Richardson Global Enterprises main conference room, Catherine's perfect world imploded. This is the last will and testament of James Patrick Richardson, the lawyer began. Catherine sat at the head of the table, already holding a pen to sign the transfer papers. To my daughter Catherine, the lawyer read, I leave the following. Your trust fund will continue untouched, providing you the same monthly allowance you currently receive. Catherine's smile faltered. That's it. Where's the rest? To my daughter Emma, the lawyer continued, I leave controlling interest in Richardson Global Enterprises, all associated companies, properties, and assets, effective immediately. The pen fell from Catherine's hand. That's impossible. She's not even a Richardson. Actually, I spoke for the first time. I am. Dad legally changed my name years ago, and I've been serving as the company's shadow CEO for the past 5 years. No, Catherine whispered. No. Security, I pressed the intercom button. Please escort Ms. Williams out of the building. Her access has been revoked. As security approached, Catherine knocked over her chair. You can't do this. I'm his real daughter. Being real family, I said quietly, isn't about blood, Catherine. It's about trust, loyalty, and vision. Dad understood that. I'm sorry you never did. I'll fight this, she screamed as security led her out. You'll never get away with stealing my birthright. I sat down in the CEO's chair, my chair. Actually, I already have. The real war, I knew, was just beginning. But Dad had taught me well, and I had plans Catherine couldn't even imagine. As her screams echoed down the hallway, I opened my laptop and began the changes that would reshape the Richardson empire, starting with the Williams family bank. Catherine's meltdown hit social media before she even reached her car. Someone in the conference room had recorded her screaming about her fake sister stealing her birthright, and the video spread like wildfire. Within hours, #Richardson drama was trending, with people divided between supporting the rightful blood heir and the secret CEO's sister. I watched it unfold from Dad's old office, my office now, while signing the papers that would begin Catherine's financial ruin. She'd made her choice at the funeral. Now she'd learned why Dad had always said I was the better strategist. Her first move came the next morning, a lawsuit challenging the will, claiming I'd manipulated our father during his illness. Her lawyers filed emergency papers to freeze the company's assets. I'd been expecting this. In fact, I counted on it. Release the documents, I instructed my legal team. Within hours, every major news outlet received copies of my official adoption papers. My legal name changed to Emma Richardson Chin, and most devastatingly, video recordings of Dad explaining his succession choice. He'd made them during his last months, knowing Catherine would challenge the will. I choose Emma, he said in the video, looking directly at the camera, not because Catherine is inadequate, but because Emma is exceptional. She's been running this company in shadow for 5 years, turning record profits while her sister was planning charity galas. Blood doesn't make a CEO, vision does. Catherine's lawsuit was dismissed within days. But I wasn't done. Remember those shell companies buying up Williams' bank debt? The day after Catherine's lawsuit failed, Richardson Global called in all the loans. Trevor's family bank, already struggling, faced immediate bankruptcy. Catherine showed up at my office, her designer outfit slightly wrinkled. A telling detail for someone who'd never had a hair out of place. You vindictive bitch, she spat. You're destroying Trevor's family. I looked up from my computer. Actually, you did that when you kicked me out of Dad's funeral. Actions have consequences, Catherine. Dad taught us that, remember? Well, one of us was paying attention. He was my father. He was our father. But while you were playing society princess, I was learning to run his empire. Did you really think those summer internships were just to keep me busy? That all those breakfast meetings were just casual conversations? Her face paled. Those were training sessions. Every single one. Dad knew who he wanted as his successor by the time I was 12. The adoption, the name change, the secret training. It was all part of his plan. You could have been part of it too, if you'd ever shown any interest in anything beyond your trust fund. I'll tell everyone, she threatened, about how you manipulated him, turned him against his real daughter. Go ahead, I interrupted, turning my laptop to show her the screen. These are the records of every transaction from your trust fund for the past 5 years. The private shopping sprees disguised as charity donations. The business meetings that were actually spa days. Oh, and let's not forget the interesting transfers to Trevor's personal account. The ones that started right after you discovered his bank was failing. She sank into a chair. How did you? I told you. I've been running this company for 5 years. Did you think I wouldn't monitor the trust funds? Dad knew about all of it. He just wanted to see if he'd ever come clean. The next phase of my plan unfolded over the following weeks. As Williams' bank collapsed, Richardson Global swooped in to save it, at the cost of Trevor's family losing control. Catherine and Trevor were forced to sell their mansion, their cars, their vacation homes. Their society friends disappeared as quickly as their wealth. Funny how that happens. But the real twist came during the shareholders' meeting 3 months later. As I presented the company's record profits under my official leadership, Catherine made one last desperate play. She burst into the meeting, waving papers. I have proof, she screamed. Proof that she's been manipulating company funds. Security moved to remove her, but I held up my hand. Let her speak. The documents she brought were actually plans I'd leaked through a carefully chosen channel, plans showing massive transfers of company funds. What Catherine hadn't realized was that they were records of her own embezzlement, done through proxy accounts she thought were untraceable. These transfers, she announced triumphantly, prove that Emma has been stealing from the company. Interesting, I replied calmly, because those transfers align perfectly with deposits made to these accounts. I projected a new set of documents on the screen. Accounts registered to Catherine Williams and Trevor Williams. The room erupted in chaos. Catherine's face went from triumphant to horrified as she realized she'd just publicly implicated herself in financial fraud. You set me up, she whispered. No, Catherine, you set yourself up. I just made sure everyone could see it. The SEC investigation was brief but thorough. Catherine and Trevor were indicted on multiple counts of financial fraud. Their remaining assets were frozen. The trust fund, their last financial lifeline, was suspended pending criminal investigation. Dad would have appreciated the symmetry. The sister who'd relied on blood ties losing everything to the sister who learned strategy. 1 year later, I sat in my office reviewing the latest acquisition proposals. Richardson Global had doubled in size under my leadership, expanding into new markets while maintaining the ethical business practices Dad had valued. My phone buzzed with a news alert. Catherine had taken a plea deal. 2 years in a minimum security prison, followed by 5 years of probation. Trevor had fled to a non-extradition country, leaving her to face the charges alone. I picked up the photo on my desk. Dad and me at my college graduation, both of us smiling, sharing a secret the world wouldn't understand for years. You were right, Dad, I whispered. Patience is the deadliest weapon. A notification popped up on my screen. Catherine's auction house was selling her remaining possessions to pay legal fees. Among the items, a family photo album listed as Richardson Family Memories. I bought it anonymously and had it delivered to her prison cell with a note. Blood isn't what makes a family. Trust is. You never understood the difference. The media eventually moved on to other scandals, other family dramas. Richardson Global continued to thrive, its adopted CEO becoming known for both business acumen and philanthropic work, particularly supporting adoption agencies and educational programs for orphan children. Every year, on Dad's birthday, I visit his grave alone. I leave 2 things, fresh flowers and a copy of the company's annual report. Last year, I added a 3rd item, a newspaper clipping about Catherine's sentence with a simple note. You taught me well, Dad. The best moves really are the ones they never see coming. Catherine gets out of prison next year. Her trust fund is gone. Her society friends have forgotten her. And her husband is sipping cocktails somewhere without an extradition treaty. Me? I'm in Dad's old office, my office, planning the company's next expansion. There's a new photo on my desk now, next to the graduation picture. Me with a group of business students I mentor. All of them adopted. All of them learning what Dad taught me. That family isn't about blood. It's about choice. And sometimes the family you choose is better than the family you're born into. Just ask Catherine. I'm sure she has plenty of time to think about that now. The night was bitter cold as I stood on our front porch, my thin jacket doing little to shield me from the harsh December wind. My father's words still rang in my ears, each syllable sharp as ice. "Get out," he had said, his voice trembling with rage. "You're no daughter of mine." My name is Amanda Chen, and at 17, I became everything my traditional Chinese American parents feared: pregnant, unmarried, and according to them, a disgrace to the family name. I watched through blurry eyes as my mother lingered by the window, her face a mask of disappointment before she turned away, letting the curtain fall. The message was clear. I was alone now. The few possessions I'd managed to grab were stuffed into my school backpack. Some clothes, my phone charger, and the positive pregnancy test that had shattered my family just hours ago. My hand instinctively went to my still flat stomach, protecting the life growing inside even as my own world crumbled around me. Jason, my boyfriend and the baby's father, had disappeared the moment I told him. No calls, no texts, nothing. Just radio silence and blocked social media accounts. The coward's way out. I made my way down the familiar street where I'd grown up, past the maple tree I used to climb and the garden my mother tended so carefully. Each step felt like leaving another piece of myself behind. The streetlights cast long shadows as tears froze on my cheeks. Mrs. Rodriguez, our elderly neighbor, was the one who found me hours later, huddled on a park bench trying to stay warm. She had always been kind to me, sneaking me extra cookies when I was younger and teaching me Spanish phrases while she gardened. "Oh, mi niña," she whispered when I told her everything through chattering teeth. "Come inside before you freeze." Her small apartment was warm and smelled like cinnamon tea. She didn't judge or lecture, just listened as I poured out my fears between sobs. How could I raise a baby? Where would I live? What about school? The question seemed endless. "One day at a time," she said firmly, wrapping a blanket around my shoulders. "First, you need a safe place to sleep. You'll stay here tonight, and tomorrow we'll figure out the next step." That night, curled up on Mrs. Rodriguez's lumpy couch, I dreamed of my mother. In the dream, she was in her garden, carefully pruning her beloved roses. But as I watched, the flowers withered and died under her touch, crumbling to dust. I woke up crying. The next few weeks passed in a blur. Mrs. Rodriguez helped me enroll in a program for pregnant teens, where I could continue my education while getting support and prenatal care. I found a job at a local diner, working the morning shift before classes. The hours were long and my feet ached constantly, but every dollar I earned went into a savings account for my baby. My parents never called. I would see my mother sometimes at the grocery store, but she would turn down another aisle, pretending not to notice me. My father's car would speed up if he passed me walking to work. It was like I had become a ghost in my own hometown, invisible to the people who had raised me. The other girls in my program became my lifeline. We shared our stories, our fears, and our dreams over lukewarm cafeteria food. Many of them had similar tales: families who couldn't accept their choices, boyfriends who vanished, futures that seemed to shrink with each passing day. But something unexpected happened as my belly grew. I found strength I didn't know I had. Each kick from my baby reminded me that I wasn't just fighting for myself anymore. I studied harder than ever, determined to graduate despite my circumstances. The diner manager noticed my work ethic and gave me more responsibilities, along with a small raise. When I felt my baby move for the first time, I was alone in my tiny rented room, studying for a chemistry test. The flutter was so faint I almost missed it, like butterfly wings against my skin. I pressed my hand to the spot, tears flowing freely as I whispered, "Hello, little one. I'm your mom." It was a girl. The ultrasound technician pointed out her tiny features on the grainy screen, her spine, her heart, her perfect little profile. I asked for extra printouts, secretly hoping to share them with my parents. They sat in my bag for weeks before I finally threw them away, accepting that some bridges couldn't be rebuilt. Mrs. Rodriguez helped me prepare for the baby's arrival, teaching me to knit tiny hats and booties. Her arthritis made her movements slow, but her stories kept me company as we worked. She told me about raising her own children as an immigrant, about the challenges she faced and overcame. Life never gives you more than you can handle, she would say, her needles clicking steadily, even when it feels impossible. The contractions started during my final exam of senior year. I gritted my teeth through the pain, determined to finish the test before heading to the hospital. My water broke in the taxi, and 12 hours later, I held my daughter for the first time. Lely Marie Chen came into the world at 6:43 am on a Tuesday, weighing 7 pounds 2 ounces. She had a full head of dark hair and my mother's eyes. As I counted her tiny fingers and toes, memorizing every detail of her perfect face, I made her a promise. "You will never doubt that you're loved," I whispered. Never. Mrs. Rodriguez was my only visitor in the hospital. She brought homemade tamales and cooed over Lily in rapid Spanish. The nurses gave me sympathetic looks when no other family showed up, but I barely noticed. My whole world had narrowed to the small bundle in my arms. Graduation day fell 2 weeks after Lily's birth. I walked across the stage to receive my diploma with her strapped to my chest in a baby carrier, her weight a reminder of everything I fought for. There was no one in the audience cheering for me, but the other girls from my program whooped and hollered enough to make up for it. That summer passed in a haze of sleepless nights and endless diaper changes. I moved into a tiny studio apartment barely big enough for a bed and Lily's crib. But it was ours, paid for with my own money. The walls were thin and the neighborhood wasn't great, but it was home. Every morning, I would wake before dawn to feed Lily before dropping her at the daycare center next to the diner. The owner, Maria, had a soft spot for young mothers and gave me a discount on childcare. I worked double shifts whenever I could, saving every extra penny for our future. Sometimes, on my walks home, I would pass my parents' house. The lights would be on, shadows moving behind the curtains, life continuing as if I had never existed. Once, I saw my mother in the garden, and for a moment our eyes met. She looked older, tired. But before I could raise my hand to wave, she turned away, just like that night on the porch. I cried myself to sleep that night, Lily's soft breathing the only sound in our tiny apartment. But in the morning, I got up, put on my uniform, and kept going, because that's what mothers do. The years would pass, each one bringing new challenges and triumphs. But that first year, the year I lost my family but found myself, that was the hardest. And as I rocked my daughter to sleep each night, I wondered if my mother ever thought of us, if she missed the granddaughter she'd never met. I had no way of knowing then that 15 years would pass before I heard my mother's voice again, that when the phone finally rang, everything would change. 15 years can change a lot. I had worked my way up from waitress to restaurant manager, eventually saving enough to open my own small cafe. Lily had grown from that tiny baby into a bright, confident teenager who filled our home with laughter and music. The night the call came, I was going over the cafe's monthly expenses while Lily practiced violin in her room. The unknown number flashing on my phone made me hesitate before answering. Amanda. The voice was older, more fragile than I remembered, but unmistakably my mother's. My hand tightened around the phone as memories flooded back. That cold December night, the turnbacks, the years of silence. "Your father is dying," she said, her voice cracking. "Cancer. The doctors say he has weeks, maybe days. He's asking for you and Lily." I sat there stunned as she continued. "I know we don't deserve to ask anything of you, but please, he wants to meet his granddaughter before." She trailed off, leaving the sentence unfinished. The violin music from Lily's room stopped, and I heard her footsteps in the hallway. "Mom, who's on the phone?" I covered the receiver with my hand. "Just a work call, sweetie. Keep practicing." My mother must have heard her voice because she made a small, choked sound. "She sounds lovely." "She is," I said firmly, "no thanks to you or Dad." The silence that followed was heavy with 15 years of unspoken words. Finally, my mother spoke again, her voice barely above a whisper. "I know, I was wrong, Amanda. So terribly wrong." I closed my eyes, fighting back tears. How many nights had I dreamed of hearing those words? How many times had I imagined this moment of acknowledgement? But now that it was here, I felt nothing but a deep, aching exhaustion. "I need time to think," I said. "And I need to talk to Lily. This isn't just about me anymore." "Of course," my mother replied quickly. "Just, please don't wait too long." After hanging up, I sat at the kitchen table, my mind racing. The cafe's paperwork lay forgotten as memories crashed over me like waves. The day I told them I was pregnant. The look of disgust on my father's face. My mother's silence, perhaps more painful than his rage. Lily appeared in the doorway, violin still in hand. At 15, she looked so much like I had at her age. The same dark eyes, the same stubborn chin. But where I had been uncertain, she carried herself with quiet confidence. "That wasn't a work call, was it?" she asked, setting her violin down. "You're crying." I touched my cheek, surprised to find it wet. "No, it wasn't." "Come sit down, sweetheart. There's something we need to talk about." She listened quietly as I told her about my parents, about that night 15 years ago, about all the things I'd never had the courage to share before. Her face remained thoughtful, processing each detail with a maturity that made my heart ache. "So my grandfather is dying," she said when I finished, "and he wants to meet me." I nodded, watching her carefully. "Yes, but it's completely your choice. We don't owe them anything." Lily was quiet for a long moment, absently plucking at a loose thread on her sleeve. "I want to go," she said finally. "Not for them, but for you. You deserve closure, Mom." I pulled her into a tight hug, marveling at how wise my daughter had become. "When did you get so smart?" She grinned against my shoulder. "Must be all those books you make me read." The next morning, I called my mother back. Her answer was immediate, as if she'd been sitting by the phone waiting. "We'll come," I said, keeping my voice steady. "Tomorrow afternoon, but I have conditions." "Anything," she breathed. "First, this is about Lily. If Dad says one word, one single word, to make her feel unwelcome or unwanted, we leave. Second, I won't pretend the past didn't happen. No swept under the rug family reunion. And third, I took a deep breath. You need to hear our story. All of it. Everything you missed while you were pretending we didn't exist." There was a pause, then a soft, "Yes, of course." I spent that night going through old photos. Lily's first steps, her first day of school, dance recitals, violin concerts, 15 years of memories they had chosen to miss. Each picture was a reminder of how much we'd accomplished on our own, but also of how much they had lost. Mrs. Rodriguez had passed away 5 years ago, but I still had the first baby hat she'd knitted for Lily. I packed it with the photos, a tangible piece of the woman who had been more family to us than our own blood. The drive to my parents' house the next day felt surreal. The neighborhood hadn't changed much. Same neat lawns, same trimmed hedges. My mother's roses still bloomed in the front garden, though they looked a bit wild now, less carefully tended. Lily squeezed my hand as we walked up the familiar path to the front door. "Ready?" she asked. I looked at my beautiful, strong daughter and felt a surge of pride. Ready. The door opened before we could knock. My mother stood there, smaller than I remembered, her hair now more gray than black. Her hands trembled as she reached toward me, then dropped to her sides. "Amanda," she whispered. "You came." Her eyes moved to Lily, widening slightly. I saw the recognition there, the sharp intake of breath as she noticed all the ways my daughter resembled her younger self. "Would you like to come in?" she asked, stepping aside. I nodded, guiding Lily forward with a hand on her back. As we crossed the threshold, I couldn't help but remember the last time I'd walked through this door, young, scared, and alone. But this time was different. This time, I wasn't that helpless teenager anymore. And this time, I wasn't alone. The inside of my childhood home felt smaller than I remembered. Family photos still lined the hallway walls, but they stopped abruptly at my senior year. The last one taken before everything fell apart. It was like time had frozen in this house, preserving the moment just before their perfect family shattered. My father was in the living room, propped up in a hospital bed that seemed out of place among the familiar furniture. The strong, imposing man who had thrown me out 15 years ago was gone, replaced by someone frail and diminished. His eyes, though, were the same, dark and intense as they fixed on Lily. "So," he said, his voice rough, "this is my granddaughter." Lily stepped forward, her chin lifted slightly. "I'm Lily," she said clearly. "It's nice to meet you, though I wish it hadn't taken so long." I saw my father flinch at her words, but a ghost of a smile crossed his face. "Direct, like your mother," he said. "Please sit down. Both of you." My mother hurried to arrange chairs, her movements nervous and jerky. The silence that followed was heavy with unspoken words. Finally, my father spoke again. "I owe you both an apology," he said. "Though I know it's far too late." 15 years too late, I agreed, my voice steady. "Do you know what it was like, being 17, pregnant and homeless in winter? having to rely on the kindness of neighbors because my own parents threw me away. My mother made a small pained sound. Amanda, we were trying to. To what? I cut her off. To protect the family name? To teach me a lesson. Well, congratulations. The lesson I learned was that I could never count on either of you. I pulled out the stack of photos I'd brought, spreading them across the bed. This is what you missed. Lily's first steps. Her first day of kindergarten. Every Christmas, every birthday, every milestone you chose not to be part of. They leaned forward, hungry for these glimpses of the life they'd ignored. My mother's hand trembled as she touched a photo of Lily in her first ballet costume. You look just like your mother did at that age, she whispered to Lily. I wouldn't know, Lily replied quietly. I don't have any pictures of Mom from back then. The silence that followed was deafening. My father picked up a photo of Lily's elementary school graduation, where she'd won the Academic Achievement Award. You did well with her, he said finally. Better than we did with you. I did everything you said I couldn't, I said. Finished high school, built a career, raised an amazing daughter. All without your help or approval. And I own my own business now, I continued. The cafe on Maple Street, that's mine. I worked my way up from waitress to owner. Funny how the daughter you were so ashamed of turned out to be successful after all. My father's face crumpled, and for the first time in my life, I saw tears in his eyes. I was wrong, he said, his voice breaking. So terribly wrong. My pride, my stupid, stubborn pride cost me my daughter and my granddaughter. Yes, it did. I agreed. But that's not why we're here today. We're here because Lily deserves to know where she comes from, even if that history isn't pretty. And because I hesitated, then continued, because despite everything, you're still my parents. My mother reached for my hand, and this time, I let her take it. Her fingers were cold and shaking. Can you ever forgive us? She asked. I looked at Lily, who had been watching this exchange with quiet intensity. That depends, I said. Are you ready to be real grandparents? To show up for recitals, to remember birthdays, to be there when we need you? Because if this is just about easing your conscience before Dad dies, then no, I won't put Lily through that. I don't have much time left, my father said softly, but your mother does. And I've made her promise to do better, to be there in all the ways we should have been before. Lily stood up suddenly. I have a violin competition next week, she announced. First chair in the youth symphony. Will you come, grandmother? My mother's face lit up even as fresh tears spilled down her cheeks. Yes, she whispered. Yes, of course. Over the next few weeks, as my father's condition deteriorated, we began the slow, careful work of rebuilding bridges. It wasn't easy. There were moments of tension, of old hurts resurfaces, of harsh words that needed to be said. But there were also moments of healing. My mother came to the cafe, proudly telling customers that her daughter was the owner. She attended Lily's violin competition, beaming from the audience. She even helped us plant a small herb garden behind the cafe, teaching Lily the gardening skills I'd never let her teach me. My father held on long enough to see Lily perform a private violin concert in his room, her music filling the house with something that felt like forgiveness. He died peacefully the next day, holding both our hands. At the funeral, I stood between my mother and daughter, thinking about the long, twisted path that had led us here. The years of pain and silence, the strength I'd found in solitude, the daughter who had taught me more about love and resilience than my parents ever had. What happens now? Lily asked later as we sat in our apartment above the cafe. I looked at my mother, who had come home with us, who was learning to be the grandmother she should have been all along. Now, I said, we write a new story, together. That night, as I lay in bed, I thought about the 17-year-old girl standing alone in the cold, thinking her life was over. I wish I could tell her that she was stronger than she knew, that she would build a beautiful life from the ashes of what was lost. But mostly, I wish I could tell her that sometimes the hardest paths lead to the most meaningful destinations. That forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting, but it can mean finding peace. And that love, even when it seems completely broken, has a way of coming full circle. My phone buzzed with a text from my mother. Lunch tomorrow? I'd love to hear more about your high school years with Lily. I smiled as I typed back, yes, there's so much to tell. Because that's the thing about family, sometimes you have to lose it to find it again. Sometimes you have to break apart completely before you can rebuild something stronger. And sometimes, just sometimes, 15 years isn't too long to wait for a second chance. Get out. James's voice was cold as he stood in our marble foyer, casually swirling whiskey in a crystal glass. Your things are already packed. I stared at the Louis Vuitton suitcases lined up by the door, the ones he bought me last Christmas when everything still seemed perfect. My hands trembled, but I kept my voice steady. So that's it? After 8 years of marriage, you're just throwing me out. He smirked, taking another sip. Come on, Emma. Let's not make this dramatic. We both know this marriage has served its purpose. Your inheritance helped build ClearTech into what it is today. Now that we're going public, I need someone more suitable by my side. Someone who understands the tech world. My name is Emma Chen, and at 34, I was watching my life crumble around me. 8 years ago, I'd married James believing in love and forever. He was brilliant but struggling, working on a startup he swore would change the world. When my parents died in a car accident 2 years into our marriage, leaving me their life savings and family business shares worth $3 million, I didn't hesitate to invest it all in his dream. You mean someone like Melissa? I asked, thinking of his 25-year-old head of marketing who'd been spending more and more time at our house lately. The way she looked at him during dinner parties, how they always seemed to be having late meetings. James's smile widened. Melissa understands vision. She gets what it takes to build something revolutionary. You, he gestured dismissively with his glass. You were great for the early days. The supportive wife, the generous investor. But ClearTech is worth $100 million now. We're playing in the big leagues. I looked around our mansion. The sweeping staircase, the chandelier that cost more than most cars. The art I carefully selected to make this place feel like home. All of it built with my family's money, my trust, my love. The board meets tomorrow to finalize the IPO, James continued, checking his Rolex. Another gift bought with my inheritance. Melissa and I need to prep. So if we could wrap this up. I walked to the suitcases, my heels clicking against the marble floor. Each step felt heavy with 6 years of memories. The dinner parties I'd hosted to help him network, the nights I'd stayed up listening to his ideas, the vacations we canceled because he needed to work. I believed in him completely, had been so proud to help build his dream. You know what's funny? I said, turning to face him. You think you've won, that you've played this perfectly. He raised an eyebrow, amused. Haven't I? ClearTech is about to go public. I'm about to become one of the youngest tech billionaires in the country. And you? He shrugged. You'll get whatever the prenup stipulates, which, if I remember correctly, isn't much. I smiled, thinking of everything he didn't know. The quiet moves I'd made over the past year as I watched him grow more distant, more arrogant. The careful planning that would turn his smug grin into shock. Good luck with the IPO, James, I said, grabbing my suitcases. I'm sure it'll be interesting. His confidence faltered for just a moment. What's that supposed to mean? You'll see. I walked out without looking back, the heavy door closing behind me with a final thud. What James didn't know, what he'd been too arrogant to even consider, was that I wasn't as naive as he thought. Growing up in a business family had taught me to always protect myself. While he was busy building his empire and courting Melissa, I'd been watching, learning, and preparing. The inheritance he used to build ClearTech? I had documentation for every penny, dated, notarized, and safely stored with my lawyer. The early company contracts, all carefully preserved, showing my role as more than just a silent investor. The long hours he claimed to be working, I had proof of much more interesting activities. But my real insurance policy was something far more valuable, something that would make tomorrow's board meeting very interesting indeed. I checked into the Four Seasons, a small indulgence I planned ahead for. As I unpacked, my phone buzzed with a text from my best friend Lauren. Are you okay? Did you do it? It's done, I replied. He kicked me out just like we expected. Melissa's already moving in. That smug bastard, she texted back. He has no idea what's coming, does he? I smiled, thinking of the documents safely stored in my laptop. Documents that would turn James's perfect plan upside down. No, I wrote. He doesn't. That night, I sat in my hotel room watching the city lights twinkle below. 6 years ago, James had been a struggling entrepreneur with big dreams. I believed in those dreams, had wanted to be part of building something meaningful. The $3 million from my parents had seemed like fate, a way to honor their memory by helping create something amazing. I remember the day I transferred the money to ClearTech's account. James had hugged me tight, promising we'd build an empire together. You and me against the world, he'd said. Partners in everything. Now here I was, kicked out of my own house so he could move in his girlfriend. The wife who funded his success discarded like yesterday's news. But James had made one crucial mistake. He'd underestimated me. Growing up watching my father run his business, I'd learned that trust was good, but documentation was better. My phone buzzed again, this time with an email from my lawyer, Sandra. Everything's in place for tomorrow. Are you sure you want to do this? Once we move forward, there's no going back. I thought about James's smug smile as he dismissed me, about all the nights I'd spent alone while he was working late with Melissa, about how he thought he could use me and throw me away. Unsure, I replied, let's show them what I'm really worth. Tomorrow, James would learn that his perfect plan had one fatal flaw. Me, and I was done being underestimated. As I walked into ClearTech's gleaming headquarters the next morning, the security guard did a double take. Mrs. Chen. Mr. Wilson said, that I wouldn't be coming in anymore. I smiled, sliding my still valid ID card across the desk. He was mistaken about a lot of things, Tom. The elevator ride to the top floor felt surreal. How many times had I visited James here, bringing him lunch during late nights or attending company events? The modern art on the walls, the sleek furniture in the reception area, all of it chosen with my inheritance money. I could hear voices from the boardroom as I approached. James was mid-speech, his voice carrying that confident tone I'd once found so charming. Which is why this IPO will position ClearTech as the leading innovator in cloud security, our proprietary technology. I pushed open the door, and the room fell silent. 12 board members turned to stare at me, their expressions ranging from shock to discomfort. James stood at the head of the table, his presentation frozen on the screen behind him. Next to him, Melissa's perfectly made-up face paled. Emma. James recovered quickly, his smile tight. This is a private board meeting. You shouldn't be here. I took a seat at the far end of the table, placing my laptop in front of me. Actually, I have every right to be here. As a major stakeholder in ClearTech, I think the board should hear what I have to say before voting on the IPO. One of the board members, an older man named Richard, leaned forward. Mrs. Wilson, we were under the impression that you had no official role in the company. It's Ms. Chen. I corrected him, opening my laptop, and that impression was incorrect. In fact, there's quite a lot about ClearTech that needs clarification. James's facade cracked slightly. Emma, don't do this. Whatever you're thinking. I connected my laptop to the presentation screen, and the room gasped. There on display was the original investment agreement, $3 million transferred from my personal account to start ClearTech, with clear terms about my role as a founding investor. As you can see, I said calmly, my investment wasn't just a wife supporting her husband. It was a formal business arrangement with specific conditions about my involvement in major company decisions, like, say, an IPO. The board members shifted uncomfortably, several of them shooting questioning looks at James. He had always portrayed ClearTech as his sole creation, conveniently leaving out the fact that his wife's inheritance had made it all possible. That was years ago, James said dismissively. The company has grown far beyond that initial investment. True, I nodded, clicking to the next slide, which is why I found it interesting that you've been systematically erasing my contributions from company records. These are the original documents, and these, I split screen to show altered versions, are what you submitted to the SEC for the IPO filing. The room erupted in murmurs. Document falsification in an IPO filing was serious, the kind of thing that could derail the entire process and trigger investigations. This is ridiculous, Melissa spoke up, her hand possessively on James's arm. You're just bitter because my husband used my family's money to build this company, then tried to push me out when he thought he didn't need me anymore. I interrupted. No, Melissa, I'm not bitter. I'm just well prepared. I clicked to the next slide, and James's face went ash white. There on the screen were bank statements showing systematic fund diversions from ClearTech's accounts to offshore holdings. Millions of dollars moved quietly over the past year. Would anyone like to explain these transactions? I asked innocently. Because I'm very curious about why company funds were being moved to accounts in the Cayman Islands right before the IPO announcement. Richard, the board member who'd spoken earlier, stood up abruptly. Mr. Wilson, is this accurate? James tugged at his collar, his cool demeanor cracking. These are complex financial arrangements for tax purposes, completely standard. Standard? I raised an eyebrow. Is that what you told Melissa when you promised her shares from these accounts? When you planned to cash out together after the IPO? Melissa jumped up, her chair scraping against the floor. How did you? No. I finished for her. Let's just say you should be more careful about what you discuss over company email, especially when the company's security system was partly funded by the person you're planning to betray. The boardroom erupted into chaos. Several members were on their phones, presumably calling their lawyers. Others were demanding immediate explanations from James, who stood there looking like his perfect world was crumbling around him. This is a simple choice, I said, raising my voice above the commotion. Either we postpone the IPO and restructure the company leadership to reflect its true ownership, or I take this evidence to the SEC. Your call. James stormed around the table toward me, his face contorted with rage. You manipulative bitch, he hissed under his breath. You're trying to destroy everything I built. No, James, I said quietly, meeting his gaze. I'm taking back what's mine, what we built together, before you decided to throw me away. The board quickly called for an emergency recess. As people filed out of the room, many of them already on their phones with crisis managers and lawyers, I packed up my laptop calmly. Everything I'd shown them was just the tip of the iceberg. I had more evidence, more proof of James's deceptions, safely backed up and ready to deploy if needed. Richard, the senior board member, approached me as I stood to leave. Ms. Chen, I think we need to have a longer conversation about your role in Clear Tech. Perhaps over lunch? I smiled, shouldering my bag. I'd like that. I have quite a few ideas about the company's future. As I walked out, I caught a glimpse of James and Melissa in heated discussion, their perfect plan falling apart around them. He looked up as I passed, and for the first time since I'd known him, I saw fear in his eyes. This was just the beginning. James had thought he could discard me without consequences, but he was about to learn just how expensive that mistake would be. The weeks following the board meeting were a whirlwind of legal negotiations, emergency board sessions, and company restructuring. I watched from my temporary office on the 19th floor, not quite the penthouse suite where James still sat, but close enough to keep an eye on things. The IPO had been postponed indefinitely. After my revelations, the board wasn't taking any chances. They'd hired independent auditors to go through every transaction, every document, every decision made in the past 6 years. What they found made my evidence look tame in comparison. They've uncovered at least $12 million in questionable transactions, Sandra, my lawyer, told me one morning as we reviewed the latest findings. James wasn't just planning to cash out with Melissa. He was setting up a parallel company structure. He was going to use the IPO money to start fresh, leaving Clear Tech as an empty shell. I sipped my coffee, looking out over the city skyline. And Melissa? Any word from her legal team? Sandra smirked. She's singing like a canary, turned over everything. Emails, texts, recorded conversations. Apparently, she's not as loyal to James now that his perfect plan has fallen apart. I wasn't surprised. Melissa had always been ambitious, but her loyalty extended only as far as her own interests. Once she realized James couldn't deliver the wealthy future he promised, she'd switched sides quickly. The press had been having a field day with the story. Tech CEO's IPO dreams crumble amid fraud allegations, read one headline. Clear Tech founder's wife exposes million-dollar deception, screamed another. James' reputation in the tech world, once golden, was now thoroughly tarnished. But I wasn't interested in revenge, I wanted justice. The board had been surprisingly receptive to my proposals for restructuring the company. With James's credibility destroyed and the threat of SEC investigations looming, they were eager to find a stable path forward. The board meeting's in an hour, Sandra reminded me, gathering her papers. Are you ready? I nodded, straightening my blazer. More than ready. The boardroom looked different now. The same sleek table, the same floor-to-ceiling windows. But the energy had changed. James sat at the far end, his usual confidence replaced by barely contained anger. His lawyer whispered something in his ear as I took my seat. Richard called the meeting to order. As you all know, we're here to finalize the leadership restructuring of ClearTech. Following the independent audit and extensive legal review, the board has prepared a resolution. I kept my expression neutral as he read through the terms. James would step down as CEO, though he retained a minority stake in the company. The offshore accounts would be frozen and investigated. And most importantly, I would be installed as executive chairperson, with final say over all major company decisions. This is insane, James burst out, standing up. You're giving her control of my company? Our company, I corrected him quietly, built with my family's money, my support, and my trust. Money you tried to steal, support you abused, and trust you betrayed. The board members shifted uncomfortably, but no one spoke up to defend James. They'd all seen the evidence, all realized how close they'd come to being implicated in his schemes. The resolution is fair, Richard said firmly. Ms. Chen's investment and early involvement were instrumental in building ClearTech. Her recent actions protected not just her interests, but those of every shareholder and employee. The vote was quick and decisive. 10 in favor, 2 abstaining, none opposed. Just like that, control of ClearTech passed to me. As people filed out of the room, James approached me, his face dark with fury. Congratulations, he spat. You've destroyed everything I worked for. I stood up slowly, gathering my things. No, James, I saved what we built together. You're the one who tried to destroy it with greed and lies. You think you can run this company, he sneered. You don't know the first thing about tech. I know about loyalty, I replied. About building trust and keeping it. The technology might be complex, but the principles of good business are simple, something my father taught me long ago. I walked to the door, then turned back for one last look at the man I'd once loved so completely. I always knew my sister Rachel would try to ruin my wedding. I just didn't expect her to do it quite so spectacularly. My name is Emma Collins, and I met the love of my life, James, while he was waiting tables at a small Italian restaurant in downtown Boston. At least that's what everyone thought. The truth was far more interesting, but we'll get to that. He's a waiter? Rachel had sneered when I told my family about him. Really, Emma? With your education and background, you could do so much better. That was Rachel, always measuring everything by status and money. She'd married a hedge fund manager right out of college and never let anyone forget it. The fact that I, her Yale-educated younger sister, would settle for someone who served pasta for a living was apparently a personal affront. What she didn't know was that James had a very good reason for working at that restaurant. As the secret heir to the Romano restaurant empire, he believed in learning the business from the ground up. Every aspect of it, from washing dishes to serving customers. But we'd agreed to keep that quiet until after the wedding. Let them judge, he'd said, his dark eyes twinkling. It's more fun that way. The morning of our wedding dawned bright and clear. The small church we'd chosen was perfect. Intimate, elegant, nothing like the extravagant affair Rachel had thrown for her own wedding 3 years ago. I was in the bridal suite, my mother fussing with my veil, when Rachel burst in. You can't go through with this, she declared, still wearing her designer dress like armor. Do you know what people are saying? That you've lost your mind. The only person saying that is you, Rachel, my mother said tiredly. She'd grown weary of Rachel's drama over the past few months. Mom, she's throwing her life away. He probably just wants her money. I couldn't help but laugh at that. My modest teacher's salary compared to James's hidden billions was almost comical. But Rachel took my laughter as defiance. Fine, she snapped. Ruin your life. But don't come crying to me when you're living in some cramped apartment above a restaurant. If she only knew about the penthouse James and I had already picked out, or the private island where we'd be spending our honeymoon. But I held my tongue, remembering our agreement. The truth would come out soon enough. The ceremony began beautifully. James stood at the altar, looking handsome in his tailored suit, which Rachel had probably assumed was rented. Our closest friends and family filled the pews, though notably fewer on my side since Rachel had convinced several relatives it wasn't worth attending. Then came the moment that would be talked about for years to come. If anyone knows any reason why these two should not be joined in marriage, speak now or forever hold your peace. Rachel stood up. This is ridiculous, she shouted, her voice echoing through the church. Emma, you're making a huge mistake. You're better than this. You're marrying a waiter, for God's sake. How pathetic can you be? The church fell silent. James squeezed my hand gently, and I saw the corner of his mouth twitch. Should we tell her? He whispered. I shook my head slightly. Not yet. Rachel wasn't finished. She stormed toward the altar, her expensive heels clicking against the stone floor. Everyone here knows this is a joke. Emma, you were supposed to be the smart one, the successful one. And now look at you, throwing it all away on some server. Rachel, our father warned from the front pew, but she ignored him. When this all falls apart, don't expect any sympathy from me. You've made your bed, probably a very cheap one, now lie in it. With that final shot, she turned and stormed out of the church, leaving stunned silence in her wake. The minister cleared his throat awkwardly. Shall we continue? I looked up at James, saw the love and amusement dancing in his eyes. Yes, I said firmly. Let's continue. The rest of the ceremony was perfect, made even better by Rachel's absence. As we exchanged rings, I couldn't help but think about what was coming. The reception would be at one of James's family's most exclusive restaurants, one that had been mysteriously closed to the public for the day. Rachel had no idea that her very public tantrum was about to backfire in the most spectacular way possible, and I couldn't wait to see her face when she realized just how wrong she'd been about everything. But first we had to get through the pictures and the drive to the reception. James helped me into the rented vintage Rolls-Royce, actually from his personal collection, as our guests showered us with rice. Ready for Act 2? He murmured in my ear. I smiled, thinking of the scene that was about to unfold at the reception. More than ready. Do you think she'll show up? Oh, she'll show up, he said confidently. People like Rachel can't resist a chance to feel superior. She'll come just to watch what she thinks will be a cheap, embarrassing reception. He was right, of course. Rachel might have stormed out of the ceremony, but there was no way she'd miss the chance to criticize every detail of our celebration. She had no idea she was walking into a reveal that would leave her speechless. As we drove toward the reception, I thought about how perfectly everything had played out. Rachel's outburst, while hurtful, had only made what was coming sweeter. Sometimes the best revenge isn't about getting even. It's about letting someone's own actions set the stage for their humiliation. The Romano, James's family's flagship restaurant, loomed ahead. Its elegant facade and prime location usually hosted celebrities and dignitaries. Today it would host a revelation that would change my family dynamic forever. Here we go, James said, helping me out of the car. Ready to show your sister who she really just insulted in front of everyone? I smoothed my dress and took his arm. Let's give her a show she'll never forget. The doors of the Romano swung open, and I heard the collective gasp from our arriving guests. Crystal chandeliers cast a warm glow over marble floors and hand-painted murals. White-gloved servers circulated with champagne, each bottle worth more than what most people thought James made in a month. This must be a mistake, I heard someone whisper. How could they afford this place? Rachel arrived fashionably late, probably expecting to find us in some budget banquet hall. She froze in the doorway, her perfectly made-up face twisted in confusion. There's been a mix-up, she said loudly, approaching me. This is the Romano. They don't do wedding receptions, ever. They made an exception, James said smoothly, appearing at my side. For family. Before Rachel could respond, an elderly man in an impeccable suit approached us. Everyone in the restaurant business knew Antonio Romano, the patriarch of the Romano Empire. He was notoriously private, rarely seen in public. James, he said warmly, embracing my husband. My grandson, finally married to his beautiful Emma. The silence in the room was deafening. Rachel's champagne glass slipped from her fingers, shattering on the marble floor. Grandson? She choked out. What do you mean, grandson? Antonio turned to her, his eyes sharp despite his age. And you must be the sister who caused such a scene at the church. Tell me, what was it you called my grandson? Ah yes, some server. The color drained from Rachel's face as the truth sank in. James wasn't just a waiter. He was the heir to one of the largest restaurant empires in the country. The Romano Group owned hundreds of high-end establishments across the globe, along with hotels, vineyards, and real estate. I didn't know, she stammered. Clearly, Antonio said dryly. Perhaps next time you'll remember that true class isn't about what someone does for a living, but how they treat others. James squeezed my hand as Rachel stood there, mortified. Around us, guests were beginning to whisper as they pieced together the truth. The simple wedding ceremony followed by this lavish reception. The waiter, who was actually restaurant royalty. "Why did he tell me?" Rachel demanded, finding her voice. "You let me believe. You let me make a fool of myself." "Would it have mattered?" I asked quietly. "Would you have treated James differently if he'd known who he really was?" Because that's exactly why we didn't tell anyone. We wanted to know who our true friends were. "But I'm your sister." "Yes," I said. "Which makes your behavior even worse. You couldn't even be happy for me unless you approved of my choice's social status." Antonio cleared his throat. "If you'd like to leave, no one would blame you. You've already provided enough entertainment for one day." Rachel's face flushed deep red. She looked around the room, seeing the judgment in everyone's eyes. The same people who had witnessed her outburst at the church were now watching her humiliation. "I should go," she muttered. "Stay," James said unexpectedly. Everyone turned to look at him. "Stay, enjoy the reception. Consider it a chance to start over, to see people for who they are, not what they own or what they do for a living." I looked at my husband with pride. Even after Rachel's awful behavior, he was showing more class than she ever had. She hesitated, then slowly nodded. I'd like that, and I owe you both an apology." "Yes, you do," Antonio agreed. "But perhaps that can wait until after the first dance. I believe my grandson and his bride have waited long enough to celebrate properly." As James led me to the dance floor, I caught glimpses of Rachel's face. She stood alone, watching us swirl beneath the chandeliers, probably calculating how many times she'd have to apologize before she could start bragging about her connection to the Romano family. "She'll never change completely," James murmured, reading my thoughts as always. "No," I agreed. "But maybe she'll think twice before judging someone based on their job again." The reception continued like a fairy tale. Course after exquisite course of Romano specialties, wine from the family's private reserve, and stories from James's time working his way up through every position in the restaurant. He insisted on starting at the bottom. Antonio told our captivated guests. Said he needed to understand every aspect of the business. Most trust fund kids want to start in a corporate office. Not mine, James. I watched Rachel's face as she realized just how wrong she'd been. The waiter she dismissed had shown more work ethic and humility than her hedge fund husband ever had. As the night went on, I saw her try to approach us several times, probably to apologize or attempt damage control. But there was always someone else wanting to talk to us, to share a story or offer congratulations. Her social punishment would last a bit longer. After all, she'd spent months making me feel small. A few hours of humility wouldn't kill her. Besides, we had other things to focus on, like the honeymoon villa waiting for us on the Romano family's private island. But that was another surprise for another day. For now, I was content to dance with my husband, surrounded by people who loved us for who we were, not what we owned. And if my sister learned something from all this, well, that was just icing on our very expensive wedding cake. A year passed and life settled into a new rhythm. James and I moved into our penthouse overlooking Boston Harbor, and I continued teaching while he took on more responsibilities within the Romano group. We kept things low-key, just as we always had, but Rachel struggled with our newfound dynamic. "You could at least let me host a proper housewarming," she complained one afternoon, eyeing our minimalist decor. "This place deserves to be shown off." "That's exactly why we don't show it off," I replied. "Some things are better kept private." She didn't understand. She'd spent the past year trying to rebuild her reputation, dropping the Romano name whenever possible. Her social media was suddenly full of posts about my sister and her husband's amazing restaurants and family dinner at the Romano. James found it amusing. "At least she's promoting the business," he'd say with a shrug. But everything changed when Rachel's perfect world started crumbling. Her hedge fund husband, Michael, got caught in a scandal. Insider trading, fraud, the works. Suddenly, the wealth she'd lorded over everyone was gone, frozen by federal investigators. She showed up at our door late one night, mascara streaking down her face. "They're taking everything," she sobbed. "The house, the cars. Michael's facing jail time. I don't know what to do." I led her to the living room, where James was working on his laptop. He looked up, concern crossing his face. I need help, Rachel admitted, the words clearly costing her pride. I don't know how to start over. James and I exchanged glances. This was the moment. Would we help the sister who tried to ruin our wedding, who'd only accepted us after learning about our wealth? There's an apartment, James said finally, above one of our smaller restaurants in Cambridge. It's nothing fancy, but it's a start. Rachel's eyes widened. You do that? After how I treated you? On one condition, I added. You work in the restaurant, learn the business from the ground up, just like James did. You mean wait tables? She looked horrified. Among other things, James said. Wash dishes, bus tables, learn to cook. Understand what it means to earn your way. Rachel was quiet for a long time, probably wrestling with her pride. Finally, she nodded. Okay, I'll do it. But will you help me? Show me how. That was the moment I knew my sister might actually change. The next few months were transformative. Rachel moved into the small apartment, traded her designer clothes for sensible shoes and work uniforms. She cried the first time she had to clean a bathroom, broke 3 plates her first night serving, and burned herself twice learning to cook. But she didn't quit. I watched her transform from someone who looked down on service workers to someone who defended them. She started leaving bigger tips at other restaurants, calling out rude customers, appreciating the complexity of work she once dismissed. 6 months into her new life, I visited her at work. She was expediting orders, her hair tied back, completely focused on her task. No makeup, no pretense, just honest work. She's doing well, James said, appearing beside me. The staff actually likes her now. Think she's learned her lesson? He smiled. I think she's learned several. Want to tell her the other news? I nodded, waiting until her shift ended. Rachel joined us at a corner table, exhausted but somehow more genuine than I had ever seen her. How would you feel about managing this place? James asked casually. Rachel's eyes widened. What? You've learned every position, earned the respect of the staff. The current manager is moving to our new location in Chicago. The job's yours if you want it. But why? After everything. Because you proved us wrong, I said softly. We thought you couldn't change, that you'd always be the person who cared more about status than substance, but look at you now. Tears filled her eyes. I was awful. To both of you. I let money and status blind me to what really matters. And now, James prompted. Now I know that what matters is who people are, not what they own or what they do for a living. She wiped her eyes. I'm actually proud to be a server now. Proud of what I've learned, what I can do. Later that night, as James and I walked home, he squeezed my hand. Your sister finally found her way. Our way, I corrected. The hard way, the honest way. Think she's ready for the family reunion next month? When everyone finds out she's managing one of our restaurants? I laughed, imagining Rachel proudly wearing her Romano restaurant uniform to the fancy gathering. I think she's finally ready to be herself, no matter what anyone thinks. And that was the greatest victory of all. Not the wedding reveal, not the humbling aftermath, but watching my sister discover who she really was beneath all the designer labels and social climbing. Sometimes the best revenge isn't about getting even. It's about helping someone grow into a better person. Rachel's transformation from judgmental socialite to hardworking restaurant manager was proof that people can change if given the right opportunity and motivation. As for James and me, we continued living simply, working hard, and remembering that true wealth isn't about what you have. It's about who you are and how you treat others. That's a lesson worth more than all the Romano billions combined. The call came on a Tuesday morning, interrupting my usual coffee and emails routine. When I saw Rebecca's name flash across my screen, I knew it wasn't going to be pleasant. It never was with her. Hello, Rebecca, I answered, keeping my voice neutral. I've sold the house, she announced without preamble, her tone dripping with satisfaction. The papers are signed, and the new owners move in next week. I hope you've learned your lesson about respecting your elders. My name is Olivia Matthews, and the house Rebecca was so smugly talking about was my childhood home, the one my father had left me when he passed away 2 years ago. Or at least, that's what Rebecca thought. The house, I repeated, fighting to keep the amusement out of my voice. You mean Dad's house? Don't play dumb, Olivia. You know exactly which house. The one you've been squatting in rent-free since your father died. Well, that ends now. I found buyers who will actually appreciate the property. I took a slow sip of my coffee, remembering the meeting I'd had with Dad's lawyer, Mr. Harrison, just days after the funeral. Rebecca had no idea about that meeting, about the documents we'd signed, or about the real ownership of the property. That's interesting, I said carefully. And you're sure everything's legal? She scoffed. Of course it's legal. I'm his widow, and the house was in his name. You may have been his precious daughter, but I have rights too. Maybe next time you'll think twice before questioning my decisions about the remodeling. Ah, there it was. The real reason behind this power play. 3 months ago, I'd stopped Rebecca from gutting the house's historic features, the hand-carved banisters, the original hardwood floors, the stained glass windows my father had lovingly restored over the years. She'd wanted to modernize everything, to erase every trace of the home my father had created. I see, I said. Well, I hope you got a good price for it. Don't worry about the price, she snapped. Just make sure you're out by next Friday. The new owners are eager to start their renovations. I could almost see her smirking, imagining me scrambling to pack up and move out. If only she knew. Thanks for letting me know, I replied. Goodbye, Rebecca. As I hung up, I couldn't help but smile. Rebecca had always underestimated me, just as she underestimated my father's foresight. She thought she knew everything about our family's affairs, but there was so much she didn't understand. I picked up my phone again and dialed Mr. Harrison's number. Olivia, he answered warmly. I was expecting your call. She did it, I said. She actually tried to sell the house. Did she now? I could hear the amusement in his voice. Well, this should be interesting. Would you like me to set things in motion? Yes, please. And Mr. Harrison, make sure the buyers understand exactly what's happening. I don't want innocent people caught in Rebecca's mess. After hanging up, I walked through the house, my house, running my hand along the walls my father had painted, the door frames he'd restored, the window seats where we'd spent countless hours reading together. Every inch of this place held memories, stories, pieces of our life together. Rebecca had married my father 5 years ago, when I was 23. At first, she played the part of the caring stepmother perfectly, all smiles and sweet words. But after the wedding, her true colors started showing. She tried to drive a wedge between Dad and me, made snide comments about our close relationship, and constantly pushed to change things about our home. Dad saw through her eventually, but by then his health was failing. In his final months, he called me into his study one evening while Rebecca was at her weekly spa appointment. Livy, he'd said, using his old nickname for me, I need you to trust me. Things aren't what they seem with Rebecca, and I've made arrangements. When the time comes, go see James Harrison. He'll explain everything. I'd wanted to ask more questions, but Dad had been so tired, so weak. 2 weeks later, he was gone. Rebecca had barely waited until after the funeral to start asserting her authority over the house and everything in it. She'd moved my father's belongings into storage, redecorated rooms without consulting me, and made it clear that she considered herself the sole owner of the property. What she didn't know was that my father had seen this coming. The meeting with Mr. Harrison had revealed just how carefully Dad had planned everything. The house, despite appearances, had never been in his name alone. Through a series of legal maneuvers I didn't fully understand, he protected it, and me, from exactly this kind of situation. My phone buzzed with a text from Rebecca. I expect the keys on my desk by Thursday. Don't make this difficult, Olivia. I smiled, typing back, Don't worry, Rebecca. Everything will work out exactly as it should. She didn't respond, probably thinking she'd won. But the real show was about to begin, and I had front row seats to watch her carefully constructed plans fall apart. My father had always told me that patience was a virtue. Sometimes, he'd say, the best response is to simply wait and let people reveal their true nature. Well, Rebecca had certainly revealed hers. Now it was time for her to learn about mine. I spent the rest of the morning going through some old photos I'd found in Dad's study. There was one of us working on the house together, covered in paint and sawdust but grinning like fools. Another showed us in the garden he'd planted, surrounded by the roses he'd lovingly tended. Rebecca had wanted to dig up those roses last spring, claiming they were old-fashioned. I'd stopped her then, just as I was about to stop her now. My phone rang again. Mr. Harrison. The wheels are in motion, he said. The buyer's lawyer has been notified of the situation. They're understandably upset with Rebecca, but relieved they found out before money changed hands. How long until she finds out? I'd say by this afternoon. Their lawyer is drafting a strongly worded letter as we speak. Would you like me to be present when she receives it? I thought about it for a moment. No, I decided. Let her deal with it alone. She needs to understand exactly what she's done. As you wish, but Olivia, be prepared for the fallout. People like Rebecca don't take humiliation well. He was right about that. Rebecca had always been proud, always needed to be in control. Finding out that she tried to sell a house she had no right to, that she'd made a fool of herself in front of potential buyers, it would hit her hard. But then again, that was exactly the point. The fallout came faster than I expected. Around 3 in the afternoon, my phone exploded with notifications, multiple missed calls, and increasingly furious texts from Rebecca. What AVU do you want? The last message read, all caps conveying her rage. I was sitting in the garden among my father's roses when she pulled into the driveway. Her Mercedes screeched to a halt, and she stormed out, waving what I assumed was the lawyer's letter. You conniving little witch, she screamed, her carefully maintained facade cracking completely. You knew about this all along. I remained seated, calm despite her fury. Knew about what, Rebecca? Don't play innocent with me. She thrust the letter in my face. The trust, the property transfer, all of it. You and James plotted this behind my back. No, I corrected her gently. Dad and Mr. Harrison arranged it. I just followed his instructions. Her face contorted with rage. Your father would never do this to me. This has to be a mistake. Actually, I stood up, brushing dirt from my jeans. Dad did exactly this to protect both me and the house. He saw through you, Rebecca. He knew exactly what you tried to do after he was gone. She took a step back, her designer heels sinking slightly into the soft garden soil. That's impossible. He trusted me. He loved me. Did he? I asked quietly. Or did he just let you think he did? The color drained from her face as the implications of my words sank in. My father, the man she thought she fooled completely, had outmaneuvered her from beyond the grave. The house was never in his name. I continued, watching her process each revelation. He transferred it to a trust years ago, long before he met you. I'm the sole beneficiary. You had no right to try to sell it. You're lying, she whispered, but I could see the doubt in her eyes. Check the property records, I suggested. They're all public. Dad made sure of that too. He wanted everything to be transparent when the time was right. Rebecca's hands were shaking now, crumpling the lawyer's letter. The buyers, they're threatening legal action. Do you have any idea how humiliating this is? Almost as humiliating as trying to throw your stepdaughter out of her own house. I countered. Or maybe as humiliating as spending years pretending to care about someone just to get their money. She flinched as if I'd slapped her. You don't understand anything about my relationship with your father. I understand more than you think. Dad told me everything before he died, about the prenup you refused to sign, about the mysterious withdrawals from his accounts, about the men you met with while he was in the hospital. Her eyes widened. He knew. He knew everything, Rebecca. He just waited, watched, and planned. Like father, like daughter, I suppose. She took another step back, her expensive suit now stained with garden dirt. This isn't over, she threatened, but her voice lacked conviction. Actually, it is, I replied, pulling out my phone. I've recorded this entire conversation. Would you like me to add it to the file Mr. Harrison is building about your attempts to illegally sell property you don't own? For the first time since I'd known her, Rebecca was speechless. She stood there, surrounded by my father's roses, looking completely lost. I'll make this simple, I said. Leave the house, leave me alone, and most importantly, leave my father's memory alone. If you try anything else, any more schemes, any more attempts to take what isn't yours, everything comes out. The affairs, the money, all of it. You wouldn't dare, she hissed. It would damage your precious father's reputation. I smiled, channeling the same quiet strength I'd always admired in Dad. His reputation can handle the truth, Rebecca. Can yours? She stared at me for a long moment, calculation visible in her eyes. Finally, her shoulders slumped slightly. Fine, she spat. Keep the house. Keep your little victory, but don't think this means you've won. I already have, I said simply. I won the moment Dad saw you for who you really are." She turned and stormed back to her car, her heels sinking into the grass with each angry step. As she drove away, I noticed she dropped the lawyer's letter in the garden. Picking it up, I smoothed out the crumpled paper. The legal language was complex, but the message was clear. Rebecca had no claim to the house, had never had any claim to it, and her attempt to sell it constituted fraud. My phone buzzed. A text from Mr. Harrison. How did she take it? "About as well as we expected," I replied. "But I think she's done." "Your father would be proud," he wrote back. "He always said you were stronger than anyone knew." I looked around the garden, at the roses Dad had tended so carefully, at the house he protected so thoroughly. He'd known this day would come, had prepared for it in ways I was only beginning to understand. Rebecca had thought she was teaching me a lesson about respect. Instead, she'd learned one about underestimating people, both the living and the dead. The weeks following Rebecca's confrontation brought unexpected changes. The house felt different somehow, lighter, as if a shadow had been lifted. I spent my evenings restoring rooms to their original state, undoing Rebecca's hasty modernization attempts. One evening, while sorting through boxes in Dad's study, I found a letter addressed to me in his familiar handwriting. The envelope was dated just days before his death. My hands trembled as I opened it. "My dearest Livy, if you're reading this, then everything has played out as I expected. Rebecca has probably tried to take the house by now, and you've learned of the trust arrangements I made with James. I'm sorry I couldn't tell you everything while I was alive. Rebecca was watching too closely, and I needed her to believe she had won. You see, I discovered her true nature about a year into our marriage, but by then she had already shown her hand. The mysterious illness that landed me in the hospital? Not so mysterious after all. I had James investigate, the occasional dizzy spells, the confusion, the gradual weakening. Rebecca had been adding something to my evening tea. Not enough to kill me quickly, but enough to make it look like natural decline. I played along, let her think she was succeeding. Meanwhile, I made arrangements to protect you and everything we built together. This house isn't just a building, Livy. It's our legacy, every repair and restoration a memory we shared. I know it must have hurt, watching me seem to choose her over you those last few months. Please forgive me for that deception. I needed her to believe she had complete control so she wouldn't suspect what was coming. There's more you need to know. Check behind the loose brick in the study fireplace. I left something there for you. Remember, strength isn't always about confrontation. Sometimes it's about patience, about waiting for the right moment to act. I love you, my darling girl. Dad. I sat there for a long time, tears falling onto the letter. Everything made sense now, his distant behavior in those final months, the cryptic conversations, the way he'd insisted on having tea alone with Rebecca every evening. Moving to the fireplace, I found the loose brick easily. Behind it was a small USB drive and another note. Show this to the police when you're ready. The drive contained videos from hidden cameras Dad had installed, footage of Rebecca adding something to his tea, of her secret meetings with other men, of her phone calls discussing her plans for after his death. He documented everything. My hands shaking, I called Mr. Harrison. "James," I said when he answered, "I found Dad's letter. And the drive." He was quiet for a moment. "Are you ready to take the next step?" I thought about it. The evidence on the drive was damning. Attempted murder, fraud, conspiracy. Rebecca wouldn't just lose her social standing. She faced serious criminal charges. Not yet. I decided. Let's keep it as insurance. For now, knowing we have it is enough. Your father said you'd say that. He replied, and I could hear the smile in his voice. He always said you had his sense of strategy. The next morning, a large envelope arrived from Rebecca's lawyer. Inside was a formal document relinquishing any claims to the house or my father's estate, along with a brief note. "You win, Olivia. I'm leaving the state. Don't worry about hearing from me again. Just keep what you know to yourself." She'd found the cameras. Of course she had. She would have been searching the house for anything incriminating after our confrontation. The evidence on the drive was just backup. The threat of its existence was enough. I stood in Dad's study, surrounded by the life we'd built together, and felt a deep sense of peace. He had protected me one last time, taught me one final lesson about patience and strategy. The house remained as he'd wanted it, preserved, cherished, a testament to our bond. Rebecca's attempt to steal it had failed, just as her attempts to come between us had ultimately failed. In the garden, Dad's roses bloomed more beautifully than ever. I tended them carefully, honoring his memory in every flower that opened. Sometimes, while working among them, I could almost hear his voice. Remember, Livy, the strongest roots grow in silence, hidden from view until the right moment to bloom. He had been right, of course. Strength wasn't always about confrontation. Sometimes it was about waiting, watching, and letting people reveal their true nature. Rebecca had taught me about deception, about the masks people wear. But Dad had taught me something far more valuable: how to see through those masks, how to protect what matters most, and how to win without losing yourself in the process. The house stands as it always has, a monument to love, patience, and justice served quietly but completely. And somewhere, I like to think Dad is smiling, knowing that his final lesson was well learned. As for the USB drive, it remains behind that loose brick, a silent guardian ensuring that some stories stay buried, at least for now. After all, as Dad always said, timing is everything.